Excuse me, miss. This line is for business travelers only. The regular security checkpoint is back that way.
Victoria Blackwell's voice cut through the bustling chaos of JFK Terminal 4 like a blade through silk. She stood behind the first-class security podium in her perfectly tailored navy blazer, her blonde hair swept into an elegant chignon, every inch the picture of corporate authority. Her emerald eyes locked onto the young black woman in front of her with the kind of practiced disdain that comes from years of deciding who belongs and who doesn't. The woman she was addressing looked up calmly. Dr. Maya Rodriguez, though Victoria didn't know that name yet, stood there in faded jeans and an oversized MIT sweatshirt, a simple black backpack slung over one shoulder. At 31, Maya had the kind of quiet confidence that comes not from proving yourself once, but from proving yourself over and over until you stop caring who doubts you. "I have a first-class boarding pass," Maya said evenly, holding up her phone. The digital ticket glowed clearly on the screen. First-class seat 2A. Victoria's perfectly manicured fingers drummed against her clipboard. She'd been head of terminal security operations for 3 years, and she prided herself on maintaining what she called premium experience standards. In her mind, that meant keeping certain types of people in their proper places. "Anyone can fake those these days," Victoria replied, her voice carrying just loud enough for the other passengers in line to hear. "I'm going to need to see some identification. Before we dive deeper into what's about to unfold, I need to ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city in the comments below, because what happens next will shock you. This isn't just a story about one woman and one security officer. It's about power assumptions and the moment when someone's worst judgment call becomes their biggest mistake. If you've ever been judged by your appearance, especially in a place where you actually had more power than the person judging you, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this plays out." Maya calmly reached into her backpack and pulled out her driver's license along with a black American Express Centurion card. She placed both on the metal counter without a word. The license read Dr. Maya Rodriguez, and the credit card had no preset spending limit. Victoria picked up both items with 2 fingers as if they might contaminate her. She squinted at the license, then at Maya, then back at the license. The name meant nothing to her, but it should have. In exactly 18 minutes, that name would be plastered across every news screen in America. Dr. Rodriguez, Victoria said, drawing out each syllable with skepticism. "And what kind of doctor are you?" "The kind with a PhD in civil engineering from MIT and another in computer science from Stanford," Maya replied quietly. Her voice carried no anger, no defensiveness, just facts. A few people in line were starting to pay attention. Sarah Williams, a travel blogger from Portland, had been scrolling through her phone when she heard the exchange. Something about Victoria's tone made her look up. Sarah had built her following by documenting travel experiences, but this felt different. This felt important. She quietly opened her Instagram and started recording. "That's nice," Victoria said, though her tone suggested it was anything but. "Unfortunately, I'm still going to need to verify these credentials. Security protocols, you understand." Maya understood perfectly. She understood that no other passenger in this line would be asked to verify their PhD. She understood that Victoria had made a decision about who she was the moment she'd seen her skin color and casual clothes. And she understood something else that Victoria didn't. She was about to become the most powerful woman in Victoria's professional world. "Of course," Maya said. "Take all the time you need." Victoria walked to her computer terminal and pretended to run some kind of verification check. What she was actually doing was hoping Maya would get frustrated and storm off to the regular security line, making Victoria's life easier. What she didn't realize was that Maya had all the time in the world and very good reasons for staying exactly where she was. Behind Maya, the line was growing restless. A businessman in an expensive suit checked his Rolex and sighed loudly. A woman with 3 designer shopping bags shifted impatiently. But Maya stood perfectly still, her calm presence somehow making Victoria more agitated. "Is there a problem here?" asked Carlos Mendez, a junior security officer who'd been watching from his position at the X-ray machine. At 28, Carlos had worked at JFK for 2 years and had noticed Victoria's pattern of giving certain passengers a harder time. He'd never said anything, but it made him uncomfortable. "Everything's under control, Mendez." Victoria snapped without looking at him. "Just doing my job." Carlos nodded but didn't move away. Something about Maya's composure interested him. Most passengers would be angry by now, demanding supervisors making scenes. Maya just stood there like she was waiting for something. Sarah Williams' Instagram livestream was starting to gain viewers. "Something ugly is happening at JFK right now," she whispered to her camera. "Terminal 4, first class security. A woman is being harassed for no reason I can see." Victoria finally returned to the podium. "I'm sorry, Dr. Rodriguez, but I can't verify your credentials in our database. I'm going to have to ask you to use the standard security checkpoint." "What database would that be?" Maya asked politely. Victoria faltered for a moment. The federal database of certified professionals." Maya smiled slightly. It wasn't a mean smile or a mocking one. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly what game was being played and had already won it. "That's interesting," Maya said, "because I wasn't aware the TSA maintained a database of PhD holders. Could you show me which regulation requires doctorate verification for first-class passengers?" Victoria's face flushed slightly beneath her foundation. She wasn't used to passengers who knew regulations. "Listen," Miss Victoria started. Dr. Maya corrected gently. "Doctor, I don't have time for games. Either use the appropriate line or I'll have to call security." The irony wasn't lost on Maya. Victoria was security threatening to call security on someone who in about 15 minutes would technically be Victoria's boss's boss's boss. "I understand you're just doing your job," Maya said, "but I have a valid first-class ticket, valid identification, and I haven't violated any regulations. So I'll wait right here while you figure out what your actual job requires." The businessman behind Maya spoke up. "Come on, lady, just check her ticket and let's move this along. Some of us have planes to catch." Victoria's eyes flashed. She hated being challenged, especially in front of an audience. And that audience was growing. Sarah's live stream now had over 200 viewers, and 2 other passengers had their phones out. "Fine," Victoria said sharply. "Put your bags on the belt and step through the scanner." Maya complied, placing her backpack and a small rolling suitcase onto the conveyor belt. As she walked through the metal detector, it beeped. Standard procedure. "Step back, please," Victoria ordered, her voice carrying more authority now. She was back in control, or so she thought. Maya stepped back and began removing her watch, a simple fitness tracker. "It's probably this," Maya said, holding up the watch. "I'll decide what it is," Victoria replied. Arms out for additional screening. As a female TSA agent began the pat-down, Victoria moved to the X-ray monitor. Maya's backpack showed the usual contents: laptop, chargers, documents. But the rolling suitcase contained something that made Victoria's pulse quicken. There, nestled in custom foam padding, was a cylindrical metal device about 6 inches long with complex internal components visible on the scanner. To someone trained in security, it looked suspicious. To someone already convinced she was dealing with a problem passenger, it looked like confirmation. Victoria's lips curled into a satisfied smile. Finally, she had something real. "Ma'am, I need you to come with me," Victoria announced loudly. "Your luggage contains a suspicious device that requires further investigation." The terminal seemed to freeze for a moment. Other passengers stepped back. Sarah Williams' live stream viewer count spiked as people shared the feed. Carlos Mendez frowned and moved closer to get a better look at the screen. Maya finished the pat-down and walked calmly to where Victoria stood beside the X-ray monitor. "That's a prototype scanner I'm transporting for a technology summit in London," Maya explained. "It's completely harmless. I have all the documentation." "I'm sure you do," Victoria said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "People like you always have explanations." The words hung in the air like a slap. Sarah Williams' stream exploded with comments. Carlos Mendez's expression hardened. And somewhere deep in Maya's mind, a decision crystallized. This wasn't just about one security officer on a power trip anymore. This was about every assumption, every bias, Every time someone had looked at her and decided who she was without knowing anything about her. This was about every time the playing field had been tilted against people who looked like her. And, in exactly 13 minutes, Victoria Blackwell was going to learn the most expensive lesson of her career. Maya Rodriguez had been underestimated before. At 12, teachers suggested she skip advanced math because some students just aren't built for STEM. At 18, MIT admissions counselors questioned whether she really belonged in their engineering program. At 24, venture capitalists told her that infrastructure wasn't sexy enough for serious investment. She'd proven them all wrong, but not through anger or defiance. Through quiet, relentless excellence that spoke louder than any argument. Now, standing in the first-class security line at JFK Terminal 4 on a humid Tuesday evening in September, Maya reflected on the path that had brought her here. Titan Infrastructure Solutions. The company she'd built from a cramped garage in Oakland was about to announce the largest airport modernization contract in U.S. history. $15.2 billion. Enough to rebuild JFK from the ground up. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was being harassed in the very airport she was about to own, metaphorically speaking. Maya had chosen to fly commercial today for a specific reason. She could afford private jets, helicopters, or any other form of transportation money could buy, but she believed in what she called ground truth, understanding the real experience of the people who would use the spaces she designed. How could she fix airport security if she never experienced it herself? She dressed down intentionally well-worn jeans, her old MIT sweatshirt from graduate school, comfortable sneakers. No jewelry except her simple fitness tracker. No designer anything. She wanted to see how the average traveler was treated, especially travelers who looked like her. The results had been immediately educational. Victoria Blackwell, meanwhile, had built her entire career on control and first impressions. At 38, she'd climbed from entry-level TSA screener to head of terminal security operations through a combination of rigid rule-following and an uncanny ability to spot what she called irregularities. Victoria prided herself on her appearance. The navy blazer was Armani-tailored to perfection. Her blonde hair was professionally styled twice a week. Her makeup was flawless, her nails pristine. She understood that in her line of work, projecting authority was half the battle. She'd grown up in Connecticut, daughter of a corporate lawyer and a real estate developer. Her world had been country clubs and private schools where everyone looked like her and shared her assumptions about how the world worked. She'd never questioned those assumptions because they'd never failed her. Until tonight. So, what exactly is this device, Victoria asked, pointing to the X-ray screen where Maya's prototype scanner appeared as a dense metallic object with complex internal wiring. It's a portable geological scanner, Maya explained patiently. It uses low-frequency sonic pulses to analyze soil composition and structural integrity. I'm presenting it at a clean energy summit in London tomorrow. Victoria's eyes narrowed. And you just carry million-dollar technology in your luggage. It's a prototype, Maya said, worth maybe $10,000 in parts. The valuable part is the software, which is stored securely in the cloud. Sarah Williams had moved closer with her phone, her live stream now approaching 1,000 viewers. The comments were flowing fast. This is straight-up profiling. What airport is this? Someone needs to report this. That woman is staying so calm I would have lost it. Carlos Mendez watched the interaction with growing discomfort. He'd worked with Victoria for over a year and had noticed patterns in her behavior. Certain passengers got extra scrutiny. Certain names got mispronounced. Certain people got the benefit of the doubt and others didn't. He'd never said anything because Victoria was his superior and he needed this job. But watching Maya's calm dignity in the face of obvious bias made his silence feel complicit. "Ma'am," Carlos said quietly, stepping forward. "The device shows up as standard electronics on the scanner. No explosive materials, no prohibited components." Victoria turned to him sharply. "Did I ask for your opinion, Mendez?" "No, ma'am." "But our protocols are that I handle sensitive situations. Go back to your station." Carlos hesitated for a moment, then reluctantly stepped back. But he didn't return to his station, and he quietly pulled out his phone. Maya observed this exchange with interest. She recognized Carlos as someone caught between doing right and keeping his job. She'd been in similar positions herself early in her career when speaking up could cost everything. "Miss Blackwell Maya," said, reading Victoria's name tag, "I understand you're concerned about security. I appreciate that. But I have documentation for this device, proper export licenses, and a letter from the Department of Commerce authorizing its transport." "Show me," Victoria demanded. Maya reached for her backpack, but Victoria held up a hand. "Don't touch the bag. Tell me where the documentation is and I'll retrieve it." "Front pocket, blue folder," Maya said. Victoria unzipped the pocket and pulled out a leather document holder. Inside were multiple official papers, export licenses, technical specifications, letters of authorization, and a business card that made Victoria pause. The card read, "Dr. Maya Rodriguez, CEO and founder, Titan Infrastructure Solutions." Titan Infrastructure. Victoria had heard that name somewhere recently. Something about a big contract, though she couldn't quite place it. "Infrastructure," Victoria said aloud. "Like construction, among other things," Maya replied. "We design and build large-scale projects, airports, bridges, clean energy facilities. And you're the CEO of this company." "I am." Victoria studied Maya's face, looking for signs of deception. Young black, dressed like a college student. Nothing about her fit Victoria's mental image of a CEO, therefore Victoria concluded she probably wasn't one. "Right," Victoria said. "And I'm the Queen of England." The comment sparked another wave of outrage in Sarah's live stream. Someone had already identified the airport and was posting contact information for JFK security management. The hashtag JFK discrimination was starting to trend. Maya absorbed Victoria's sarcasm without reaction. She'd heard it all before. The doubt, the disbelief, the assumption that her success must be fake or exaggerated. She'd learned long ago that the best response wasn't anger, but patience. Let people reveal who they really were. "I understand this is hard to believe," Maya said. "Would you like me to have someone verify my identity?" "Actually, yes," Victoria said, pulling out her radio. "I'm calling for additional security. We need to properly investigate the situation." As Victoria spoke into her radio, Maya reached for her phone. She had one call to make, and it would change everything. But she waited. There was a lesson unfolding here, not just for Victoria, but for everyone watching. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let someone's bias run its full course, documented and witnessed, so that when the truth comes out, the contrast is undeniable. Detective James Murphy was wrapping up paperwork when Victoria's call came through. A 20-year veteran of the Port Authority Police, Murphy had seen every kind of airport incident imaginable. But something in Victoria's voice, a combination of excitement and vindication, made him pay attention. "We've got a suspicious passenger in Terminal 4, first-class security," Victoria reported. "Unverified identity, questionable documentation, and suspicious electronic device. Need immediate assistance." Murphy sighed. He knew Victoria's reputation for being thorough. Some might say overly so, but protocol was protocol. "On my way," he replied. As Murphy headed toward Terminal 4, Maya made her decision. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. "Rachel." "It's Maya. Yes, I'm fine. But it's happening. Execute Protocol 7. The call lasted less than 30 seconds, but it set in motion a chain of events that would reshape Victoria's understanding of power, authority, and the dangerous assumption that you can judge someone's worth by their appearance. Victoria didn't know it yet, but she had just picked a fight with the most powerful woman she'd ever meet. And in about 10 minutes, everyone would know it. The terminal hummed around them with the usual airport chaos announcements echoing off glass walls, the rumble of luggage wheels on polished floors, the distant roar of aircraft engines. But in their small corner of the first-class security checkpoint, tension crystallized around two women who couldn't have been more different. One saw a problem to be solved. The other saw a system to be understood. One relied on assumptions and authority. The other relied on facts and patience. One was about to learn that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one with the most power to change it. The clock on the wall read 7:12 p.m. In 18 minutes, everything Victoria thought she knew about her place in the world would crumble. Detective James Murphy arrived at the security checkpoint to find a small crowd gathering. As a veteran police officer, he could sense tension before he saw it, and this situation practically vibrated with it. Victoria Blackwell stood behind the X-ray station like a general commanding her troops, which in this case meant Carlos Mendez and two other security officers who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. The suspicious passenger sat calmly on a metal bench, hands folded, expression serene. Murphy's first impression of Maya Rodriguez was that she didn't look like trouble. Young professional, composed. But Victoria had sounded urgent on the radio, and Murphy had learned to trust his officer's instincts. Usually. What do we have? Murphy asked Victoria. Suspicious passenger with questionable identification and a prohibited device, Victoria said, gesturing toward Maya. Claims to be a CEO, but can't verify credentials. The device could be an improvised explosive. Murphy looked at the X-ray screen, then at Maya, then back at Victoria. In 20 years of police work, he'd developed a sense for when stories didn't quite fit together. "Have you examined the device?" Murphy asked. "It's locked in a high-security case. She refuses to open it." Maya spoke for the first time since Murphy had arrived. "Actually, I offered to open it and explain exactly what it is. Miss Blackwell preferred to confiscate it." Murphy turned to Maya. "And you are Dr. Maya Rodriguez." She handed him her identification and the business card Victoria had dismissed earlier. Murphy studied both documents carefully. Unlike Victoria, he didn't make snap judgments based on appearances. The ID looked authentic, the business card expensive. Titan Infrastructure Solutions. The name sounded familiar. "What kind of business is Titan Infrastructure?" Murphy asked. "We design and build large-scale infrastructure projects," Maya replied. "Airports, bridges, transportation hubs. I'm in New York for contract negotiations. And this device, a prototype geological scanner. I'm presenting it at a clean energy summit in London tomorrow. It analyzes soil composition using sonic pulses, completely harmless." Murphy looked at Victoria. "You verified this?" How Victoria's composure slipped slightly. The device appeared suspicious on the X-ray, and her story doesn't add up." Look at her," how Murphy asked quietly. The question hung in the air like smoke. Victoria realized she'd walked into dangerous territory, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. "She doesn't look like a CEO," Victoria said. Young, inappropriately dressed, suspicious travel patterns. Murphy's expression hardened. In 20 years of police work, he'd heard every euphemism for racial profiling ever invented. He recognized them all. Meanwhile, Sarah Williams's Instagram livestream had exploded. Over 5,000 viewers were now watching, sharing, commenting. Someone had identified JFK Terminal 4 and was posting contact information for Port Authority management. The hashtag JFK discrimination was gaining momentum across social media. Carlos Mendez had been watching the entire interaction with the growing discomfort. As a Hispanic man working in airport security, he'd faced his own share of assumptions and biases. Watching Maya's calm dignity in the face of obvious prejudice reminded him of every time he'd bitten his tongue to keep his job. But something about this situation felt different. Maya's composure wasn't just patience, it was confidence, like she knew something the rest of them didn't. Carlos made a decision. He pulled out his phone and started recording his own video. "This is Carlos Mendez, JFK Security," he said quietly to his camera. "I'm documenting what appears to be racial profiling by my supervisor. This passenger has done nothing wrong." Victoria was too focused on Murphy to notice Carlos's rebellion, but Maya saw it, and she gave him the slightest nod of acknowledgement. Detective Murphy, Maya said, "I appreciate your professionalism. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about my travel or the device in my luggage." Murphy pulled out a small notebook. Unlike Victoria, he believed in documentation and proper procedure. "Purpose of travel?" he asked. "Business. I'm flying to London for a clean energy summit, then returning to New York Thursday for a major contract announcement." "What kind of contract?" Maya paused for just a moment. This was where it got interesting. Infrastructure modernization. Large scale. That's all I can say until the official announcement. Murphy nodded and made notes. Professional, coherent, consistent. Nothing about Maya's responses raised red flags for someone trained to spot deception. And the device prototype geological scanner developed by my company's R&D division uses sonic pulse technology to analyze subsurface composition. We're presenting it as part of a clean energy initiative. Documentation. Maya gestured toward the blue folder Victoria had confiscated. Export licenses, technical specifications, Department of Commerce authorization. Everything required for international transport of prototype technology. Murphy examined the documents carefully. They looked legitimate, official, properly stamped and signed. Nothing suspicious about any of it. Miss Blackwell Murphy said, "What specific regulation does this violate?" Victoria faltered. She... The device appeared suspicious. Appeared suspicious how? What training do you have in explosive device identification? I've been doing security for 15 years. That's not what I asked. Do you have bomb squad training, EOD certification? Any technical background in electronics or explosive devices? Victoria's face flushed. She was losing control of the situation and she knew it. The device has wiring and a battery pack, she said defensively. That's suspicious. So does every laptop, tablet, and phone that goes through your checkpoint, Murphy replied. That's not a valid reason for detention. Maya watched the exchange with fascination. She was seeing the exact moment when proper procedure collided with personal bias. Murphy was doing his job professionally. Victoria was protecting her ego. The crowd around them had grown larger. Other passengers had missed flights before because of security delays, but this felt different. This felt like something worth witnessing. Sarah Williams had positioned herself where she could capture everything. Her viewer count was approaching 10,000 with comments flowing faster than she could read them. This is insane. Sue the airport. What's her company name again? Someone find out who she really is. That last comment would prove prophetic. Dr. Rodriguez Murphy said, "Would you be willing to demonstrate the device to resolve this situation?" "Absolutely," Maya replied, "though I should mention that it's quite expensive and somewhat fragile. I'd prefer to handle it myself." Victoria stepped forward quickly. "No, she doesn't touch anything until we know what it is." Murphy looked at Victoria with the expression cops reserve for people who are actively making their jobs harder. "Miss Blackwell, we have a cooperative passenger with proper documentation offering to demonstrate a device that poses no obvious threat. What's your objection? I don't trust her," Victoria said bluntly. The words echoed through the checkpoint area. Even the background noise of the terminal seemed to quiet for a moment. "You don't trust her?" Why, Murphy asked. Victoria looked around the crowd, suddenly aware that dozens of people were watching phones recording social media streaming. She was the center of attention, but not in the way she'd intended. I just don't trust her." Maya spoke softly, but clearly enough for everyone to hear. "Officer Murphy, I think Miss Blackwell has made her position clear. I'm happy to comply with whatever procedure you think is appropriate." Murphy made his decision. "Ma'am, I'm going to examine your device with you present. If it's what you say it is, you're free to go." "Fair enough, more than fair," Maya replied. As they moved toward the examination table, Maya checked her watch. 7:21 p.m. In 9 minutes, everything would change. But first, Victoria Blackwell was going to get exactly what she'd asked for: a close look at what Maya Rodriguez had in her luggage. She just had no idea she was about to discover the most expensive mistake of her career. Maya's rolling suitcase lay open on the metal examination table like evidence in a crime scene. The prototype scanner, nestled in its custom foam padding, looked exactly like what it was: sophisticated technology wrapped in industrial design. Detective Murphy examined it with the careful attention of someone who'd seen actual explosive devices and knew the difference. The cylindrical housing was titanium alloy, precision machined. The internal components, visible through diagnostic windows, showed circuit board sensors and a compact battery pack. Expensive, definitely. Dangerous, definitely not. It's exactly what she said, Murphy announced. Geological scanner. I can see the sonic pulse generators, the data processing unit, the soil sample sensors. This is sophisticated engineering equipment. Victoria's jaw tightened. She'd been so certain, so confident in her judgment, but Murphy's assessment was stripping away her last justification for the detention. How do we know it's not modified? Victoria insisted. How do we know it's not hiding something else? Maya stepped forward calmly. Would you like me to run a diagnostic? The device has a self-test mode that will demonstrate all its functions. Yes, Murphy said before Victoria could object. Please do. Maya lifted the scanner from its foam housing with careful precision. It was heavier than it looked, dense with technology. She touched a sequence of spots on its surface, and suddenly it came alive. A soft blue light pulsed along its length. A gentle humming sound filled the air. The display screen on top showed scrolling data diagnostic mode. All systems functional, soil analysis ready, depth range 0, 50 meters. The blue light indicates the sonic pulse generator is active, Maya explained. The humming is the internal processor running system checks. If I were to point this at the ground, it would analyze soil composition, moisture content, and structural stability down to 50 meters depth. She touched the surface again, and the device powered down, returning to silent metal. Satisfied, Murphy asked Victoria. But Victoria was beyond rational assessment now. She'd made a public stand, drawn a line in the sand, and she couldn't retreat without admitting she'd been wrong from the beginning. I still think this situation needs further investigation, Victoria said. I'm calling for additional backup. Murphy stared at her. Additional backup for what? We've examined the device. We've verified her identification. We've reviewed her documentation. What exactly are you investigating? Victoria's radio crackled to life before she could answer. All units be advised, media crews are gathering outside Terminal 4. Some kind of major announcement expected at 7:30. Please maintain normal operations. Maya checked her watch again. 7:25 p.m., 5 minutes. Carlos Mendez had been watching everything with growing amazement. Not just at Victoria's stubbornness, but at Maya's supernatural calm. Most people would be shouting by now, demanding supervisors, threatening lawsuits. Maya just stood there like she was waiting for something, and then Carlos realized she was waiting for something. Miss Rodriguez, Carlos said, stepping forward against protocol, "You seem very patient for someone being wrongly detained." Maya smiled at him. It was the first genuine smile she'd shown all evening. "Officer Mendez, right?" she said, reading his name tag. "I'm patient because I believe in process. Even when that process is flawed, it usually finds its way to the truth eventually." And what truth is that Victoria demanded? Maya looked directly at Victoria for the first time since this began. Not with anger or defiance, but with something that looked almost like pity. "The truth, Miss Blackwell, is that in about 4 minutes, every television screen in this airport is going to show you exactly who you've been harassing for the last 20 minutes. Victoria felt a chill run down her spine. "What are you talking about?" Maya pulled out her phone and showed them the home screen. At 7:30 p.m., she had a calendar appointment that simply read CNN, live announcement. "I tried to tell you," Maya said quietly. "I'm in New York for contract negotiations. Very large contract negotiations. The kind that make national news." Murphy was beginning to understand. "What kind of contract?" "The kind that gives my company operational control over this airport's infrastructure for the next 15 years, Maya said, "including security operations." The blood drained from Victoria's face. Sarah Williams' live stream had reached 25,000 viewers. Someone in the comments had started researching Titan Infrastructure Solutions and posting links. The story was taking on a life of its own. "That's impossible," Victoria whispered. "Is it?" Maya asked. "Have you been watching the news lately?" The Port Authority's massive infrastructure modernization project, $15.2 billion, largest airport renovation in U.S. history. Victoria's hands were shaking now. She had heard about the project, everyone in airport operations had heard about it, but she'd never bothered to learn who won the contract. "I'm the CEO of Titan Infrastructure Solutions," Maya said simply. "As of 7:30 tonight, that becomes public information. As of Monday morning, we begin Phase 1 of completely rebuilding this airport, including new security protocols. Murphy stepped back slightly. In 20 years of police work, he'd never seen someone dig their own grave quite this thoroughly. "Miss Blackwell," Murphy said quietly, "I think you need to release Dr. Rodriguez immediately." "No," Victoria said desperately. She could be lying. Anyone can make claims. Maya's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and nodded. "My assistant just confirmed the news crews are in position," Maya said. "CNN, MSNBC, Fox Business. The press conference starts in 2 minutes. Carlos Mendez stepped forward with his phone. "Ma'am, I've been recording this entire interaction. Everything Miss Blackwell said and did. I think maybe my video is going to be important evidence." Victoria spun around to stare at Carlos. "You've been recording without permission, in a public space where passengers were being mistreated." "Yes, ma'am." "I have." Maya looked at Carlos with genuine respect. "Officer Mendez, you did the right thing." That took courage. The terminal's PA system crackled to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the monitors throughout the terminal. We have a special announcement beginning now." Every screen in Terminal 4 flickered and changed to CNN's breaking news logo. Victoria looked around wildly, finally understanding that she'd walked into a moment that was about to define the rest of her career. Maya Rodriguez stood calmly in the center of it all, no longer just a passenger being harassed by security. In about 60 seconds, she would be revealed as one of the most powerful women in American infrastructure. And Victoria Blackwell, who'd spent 20 minutes proving that she couldn't recognize power when it stood right in front of her, was about to learn the most expensive lesson in the history of airport security. The clock hit 7:29 p.m. Miss Blackwell Maya said softly, "You might want to watch this." The CNN logo filled every screen in Terminal 4, accompanied by the familiar breaking news chime. Passengers throughout the terminal paused their conversations, pulled out earbuds, and turned their attention to the monitors. "Good evening. I'm Miguel Santos reporting live from Manhattan," the anchor announced. "We're about to hear from Dr. Maya Rodriguez, CEO of Titan Infrastructure Solutions, regarding what's being called the largest infrastructure contract in American history." Victoria Blackwell felt the ground shift beneath her feet. The name echoed through the terminal like a judgment. Maya Rodriguez. The same name on the identification she'd dismissed, the same name on the business card she'd mocked. Maya stood perfectly still beside the security checkpoint, her expression unchanged. But Detective Murphy noticed something different about her posture now. The quiet confidence had transformed into something more potent. This was a woman stepping into her power. $15.2 billion, the CNN anchor continued to completely modernize and rebuild John F. Kennedy International Airport. The project will transform JFK into what Dr. Rodriguez calls the world's first truly sustainable major airport. Sarah Williams' Instagram livestream exploded with activity. Over 50,000 viewers were now watching, and the comment section moved too fast to follow. "No way. This is the same woman. She's literally being harassed at her own airport. Record everything. This is about to go viral." Carlos Mendez kept his phone steady, documenting Victoria's growing panic. He'd been recording for 15 minutes now, capturing every dismissive comment, every assumption, every moment of bias played out in real time. "I need to sit down," Victoria whispered, but there were no chairs. She leaned against the X-ray machine for support. Maya finally spoke, her voice carrying clearly through the checkpoint area. "Miss Blackwell, would you like to continue detaining me, or would you prefer to watch the announcement?" Victoria couldn't form words. Other security officers were gathering now, drawn by the commotion and the growing crowd. Word was spreading through the terminal's staff. The woman being harassed by Victoria Blackwell was about to be revealed as their new boss. Detective Murphy pulled out his radio. "This is Murphy in Terminal 4. I need immediate supervisory response to first-class security. We have a situation." The CNN broadcast continued. Dr. Rodriguez, a 31-year-old MIT and Stanford graduate, built Titan Infrastructure from a garage startup to one of America's leading engineering firms. Her company specializes in sustainable large-scale construction, including the revolutionary terminal designs that caught the Port Authority's attention. A photograph of Maya appeared on screen. Professional headshot, confident smile, wearing a Navy business suit. The contrast with the casually dressed woman standing in the security checkpoint was striking, but the face was unmistakably the same. More airport staff were arriving now. David Miller, the airport operations manager, pushed through the crowd with barely controlled panic. He'd heard rumors of a situation in security, but he hadn't expected this. "What the hell is going on here?" Miller demanded, looking between Victoria and Maya. Murphy stepped forward. "Mr. Miller, we have a passenger who was detained on questionable grounds. Miss Blackwell has been." "That's Dr. Maya Rodriguez." Miller interrupted, recognizing Maya from the meetings he'd attended about the infrastructure contract. His face went pale. "Jesus Christ, Victoria, what have you done?" Victoria tried to speak but only managed a strangled sound. Maya extended her hand to Miller professionally. "Mr. Miller, good to see you again. I believe we met during the preliminary contract discussions." Miller shook her hand, his own trembling slightly. "Dr. Rodriguez, I am so sorry. This is completely unacceptable." "I assure you, it's quite all right," Maya said calmly. "Actually, this has been very educational. I'm learning a lot about current operational procedures." The way she said current operational procedures carried implications that made everyone within earshot nervous. On the CNN broadcast, Miguel Santos was introducing Maya to the viewing audience. Dr. Rodriguez earned her first PhD in civil engineering from MIT at age 24. Then added a computer science PhD from Stanford. She founded Titan Infrastructure with a focus on what she calls human-centered design infrastructure that serves people rather than bureaucracies. Sarah Williams was narrating for her live stream audience. "This is insane. She's literally standing here being treated like a criminal, while CNN is calling her one of the most innovative engineers in America." Victoria finally found her voice. I didn't know. How was I supposed to know?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Maya turned to face Victoria directly. "Miss Blackwell, you didn't know because you didn't ask. You looked at me and decided who I was based on my appearance. When I showed you my identification, you dismissed it. When I explained my profession, you mocked it. When I offered to demonstrate my equipment, you refused to listen." Maya's voice remained calm, but every word landed with precision. "You didn't know because you chose not to know. You preferred your assumptions to the truth." Carlos was still recording, capturing this remarkable moment of accountability. He'd worked in airport security long enough to know that conversations like this usually happened behind closed doors, in lawyers' offices with NDAs and settlement agreements. But Maya was having it right here in public on camera. The CNN broadcast showed file footage of Titan Infrastructure Project's a bridge in California that generated its own solar power. A terminal in Denver built from recycled materials, a transportation hub in Boston that processed its own wastewater. Maya's company didn't just build infrastructure, they reimagined it. Detective Murphy was taking notes, documenting everything for his report. This was going to be one of the most unusual incident reports he'd ever filed. "Dr. Rodriguez Murphy said, for the record, would you like to file a formal complaint about your treatment?" Maya considered the question carefully. "I think the record is quite clear already. Don't you, Officer Murphy? We have multiple witnesses, video documentation, and a very public setting. Sometimes the best complaint is simply the truth well documented." She gestured toward Carlos, who was still recording, and Sarah, whose live stream had reached over 100,000 viewers. Miller stepped forward desperately. "Dr. Rodriguez, please." This was clearly a misunderstanding. "Miss Blackwell is normally very professional, Mr. Miller." Maya interrupted gently. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was exactly what it appeared to be. The question isn't whether Miss Blackwell is normally professional. The question is what happens when someone shows you who they really are. Victoria finally straightened up, some of her composure returning. But it was the wrong kind of composure, defensive rather than reflective. "I was doing my job," Victoria said, her voice gaining strength. Security is about being suspicious. I can't help if that's uncomfortable for some people. The comment triggered another explosion of activity on social media. Carlos's recording captured Victoria doubling down even as the evidence of her bias played out on screens throughout the terminal. Maya shook her head slightly. Miss Blackwell, you're still doing it. Some people, you're still not seeing me as an individual wrongly treated. You're seeing me as part of a category that makes you uncomfortable. The CNN broadcast was wrapping up their introduction. We'll be speaking with Dr. Rodriguez live in just a few moments about her historic contract and her vision for the future of American transportation infrastructure. Maya checked her watch. I need to take that interview now. It was scheduled to be a celebratory announcement about innovation and progress. Instead, I suspect I'll be answering questions about why I was detained at my own airport. She looked around the gathering crowd: security officers, airport staff, passengers with phones, police personnel. This moment right here is going to be case study material for years. Not because of the contract, but because of what happened before anyone knew about the contract. Maya walked to where her luggage sat on the examination table and calmly began repacking her prototype scanner. Her movements were precise, professional, unhurried. "Officer Mendez," she said without looking up, "thank you for documenting this. Your courage is noted and appreciated." Carlos nodded, his phone still recording. "Yes, ma'am. Someone needed to bear witness." "Detective Murphy, thank you for your professionalism. You demonstrated exactly what proper procedure looks like." Murphy tipped his head. "Just doing my job, ma'am." Maya closed her suitcase and shouldered her backpack. She looked like she was preparing to leave, but everyone sensed this wasn't over. "Miss Blackwell," Maya said finally, "you asked me to prove who I am. In about 30 seconds, CNN is going to do that for me. The question you should be asking yourself is, who are you?" The terminal screens flickered, and suddenly there was Maya Rodriguez live on CNN speaking from the news studio she'd visited earlier that day. But the Maya on screen wore a tailored navy suit, professional makeup, and the bearing of someone completely at ease with power. The contrast with the woman standing in casual clothes at the security checkpoint was stark. Same face, same voice, completely different context. Victoria stared at the screens in growing horror. This wasn't some elaborate hoax or case of mistaken identity. This was exactly what Maya had been trying to tell her for the past 20 minutes. She had detained, harassed, and dismissed one of the most powerful women in American infrastructure, on camera, with witnesses, while that woman remained calm, professional, and more gracious than Victoria had any right to expect. And now the entire country was about to know about it. Maya Rodriguez had just become the most famous airport passenger in America, and Victoria Blackwell had just become the security officer who didn't know when to stop digging. Sarah Williams's Instagram livestream had become the most watched video in the platform's history. Over 200,000 viewers were tuned in, with the number climbing every second. The comments section had evolved from outrage to amazement to something approaching awe. She knew the whole time. This is the greatest plot twist ever. Victoria is about to lose her job on live TV. Maya is a queen for staying so calm. Carlos Mendez had moved to a better vantage point, his phone capturing both Maya's serene presence at the security checkpoint and the CNN broadcast playing on screens throughout the terminal. The split-screen effect was powerful. Maya Rodriguez, the detained passenger, and Dr. Maya Rodriguez, the CEO, existing simultaneously in the same space. The CNN anchor was setting up the interview. "Dr. Rodriguez, this contract represents a fundamental reimagining of how airports function. Can you tell us about your vision for the new JFK?" On the broadcast, Maya smiled confidently. "Miguel, we're building more than an airport. We're creating a model for how infrastructure can serve human dignity. Every design choice reflects our belief that travel should enhance rather than diminish the passenger experience." Victoria Blackwell listened to these words while staring at the real Maya Rodriguez, who stood 5 feet away, calmly organizing her belongings. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. David Miller had his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in urgent whispers to someone who was probably his boss or his boss's boss, or possibly the governor of New York. Every few seconds, he glanced at Maya with the expression of a man watching his career flash before his eyes. The hashtag JFK discrimination was now trending nationwide, but it was being joined by others, Maya Rodriguez Titan Infrastructure Airport Justice. The story was taking on a life of its own across social media platforms. TikTok users were creating split-screen videos comparing Maya's treatment to her actual accomplishments. Twitter threads were documenting Titan Infrastructure's groundbreaking projects. LinkedIn was buzzing with posts about leadership and bias in corporate America. But it was happening in real time with Maya Rodriguez standing right there. Detective Murphy had been a cop long enough to recognize when a situation was becoming much bigger than anyone anticipated. He'd called for backup not because he needed additional security, but because he needed witnesses and documentation. This was going to be investigated by multiple agencies. Dr. Rodriguez Murphy said quietly, "I think you should know that this incident is already national news. Every major news outlet is picking up the story." Maya nodded without surprise. "Officer Murphy, I expected that. When you combine social media obvious injustice and a major news announcement, the story tells itself." She gestured toward Sarah's live stream, which now showed comments from viewers in dozens of countries. This isn't just about airport security anymore. It's about how we treat each other when we think no one important is watching. On CNN, Miguel Santos was asking about Maya's background. "You started Titan Infrastructure with just $50,000 and a garage in Oakland. What drove you to focus on infrastructure? Infrastructure shapes how people move through the world." "Television," Maya replied. "When it's designed with bias, it perpetuates inequality. When it's designed with intention, it can actually create opportunity and dignity." The irony wasn't lost on anyone in Terminal 4. Maya was literally speaking about designing infrastructure free from bias while standing in an airport where she'd just experienced bias firsthand. Victoria had been silent for several minutes, but now she stepped forward with what looked like desperation. "Dr. Rodriguez," she said, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was just following standard security procedures." Miss Blackwell Maya interrupted gently. "We're past misunderstandings now. We have documentation of exactly what happened and why. The question isn't whether you followed procedures. The question is whether those procedures include treating passengers differently based on assumptions about their appearance." Carlos stepped forward, his phone still recording. "Ma'am, if I may, I've worked with Miss Blackwell for over a year. This isn't unusual behavior. It's a pattern." Victoria spun to face Carlos. "You're out of line, Mendez." "No, ma'am," Carlos replied steadily. "I'm on the record, and I'm tired of being quiet about things that are wrong just to keep my job comfortable." Maya observed this exchange with interest. "Officer Mendez, you realize you're taking a significant risk by speaking up." "Yes, ma'am. But watching you handle the situation with such grace made me realize that staying silent wasn't protecting anyone. It was just protecting a system that needed to change." The CNN interview was hitting its stride. Miguel Santos asked, "Your company's motto is infrastructure for everyone. What does that mean in practice?" "It means we don't build for some theoretical average user." Television, Maya explained. "We build for the teenager flying alone for the first time. The elderly passenger with mobility challenges the business traveler rushing between meetings, the family managing multiple children and luggage. Good infrastructure accommodates human diversity, not just human efficiency." Sarah Williams pulled her phone closer and spoke directly to her audience. "Do you understand what's happening here?" She's talking about designing airports for human dignity while being treated without dignity in an airport. This is the most incredible real-time irony I've ever witnessed. Her viewer count had passed 300,000. Major news outlets were reaching out to license her footage. Sarah realized she was documenting history. Miller finished his phone call and approached Maya with the careful steps of someone approaching a loaded bomb. "Dr. Rodriguez, I've been speaking with Port Authority leadership. They want to address this situation immediately. They're sending a delegation." Mr. Miller Maya said calmly, "I don't need a delegation. I need exactly what every passenger deserves: fair treatment based on facts rather than assumptions. The delegation should focus on ensuring this doesn't happen to other passengers who don't have billion-dollar contracts to protect them. The comment landed like a precision strike. Maya wasn't just defending herself. She was advocating for every passenger who'd faced similar treatment without cameras rolling or careers at stake. On screens throughout the terminal, CNN was showing footage of Titan infrastructure projects around the world. The company had redesigned airports in 3 countries, built sustainable bridges across major rivers, and created transportation hubs that generated more energy than they consumed. Victoria watched these achievements scroll past while standing next to the woman who'd made them all possible. The woman she'd spent 20 minutes dismissing as a fraud. I didn't know, Victoria whispered, though whether to herself or to Maya wasn't clear. Miss Blackwell Maya replied, "That's exactly the problem. You didn't know, and you didn't want to know. You preferred your assumption to the possibility that you might be wrong." Carlos was still recording, capturing Victoria's growing realization of what she'd done. But he was also capturing something else: Maya's consistent grace under pressure, her refusal to humiliate Victoria, even when she had every right to do so. The CNN interview was reaching its conclusion. Miguel Santos asked, "What's next for Titan Infrastructure? We begin construction on the new JFK terminal next month," Television Maya announced. "Our goal is to create a model for how airports can serve as gateways not just to cities, but to better ways of thinking about human interaction." Maya checked her watch. The live interview was wrapping up, which meant she needed to make a decision about how this situation would end. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced to the growing crowd around the checkpoint, "I think it's time we concluded this educational experience." She shouldered her backpack and grabbed the handle of her rolling suitcase. "Miss Blackwell, I want you to know that everything that happened here tonight will be part of how we design the new security protocols. Not to embarrass you, but to ensure that no passenger experiences what I experienced." Victoria's composure finally cracked completely. "I'm going to lose my job, miss." Blackwell Maya said softly, "You lost your job the moment you decided that how someone looks matters more than who they are. I'm just the person who happened to be standing here when you made that choice visible." Maya began walking toward her gate, but the crowd followed her like she was leading a parade. Passengers, security officers, airport staff, and multiple people live streaming the entire procession. As they walked, Maya's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and smiled. "This is Maya," she answered, putting the call on speaker so everyone could hear. "Dr. Rodriguez, this is Rachel Foster. CNN is asking if you're available for additional interviews about the JFK incident. Apparently there's video going viral of you being detained at the airport." Maya looked back at Sarah, who was still streaming live. "Tell them I'm very available. And Rachel, make sure they know that Officer Carlos Mendez and Sarah Williams documented everything with remarkable courage and professionalism. They should be part of any story about tonight." Carlos and Sarah looked stunned. Maya wasn't just acknowledging their role. She was ensuring they'd be recognized for their courage. The most powerful moment was still coming. But as Maya Rodriguez walked through Terminal 4, followed by cameras and crowds, and the growing realization that justice sometimes comes in unexpected packages, one thing was already clear: Victoria Blackwell had detained the wrong person, and the entire world was watching her learn that lesson in real time. Terminal 4 had transformed from a busy airport into something resembling a live television studio. CNN had dispatched a crew from their Manhattan bureau, Fox Business was streaming live from multiple angles, and reporters from at least 6 other networks were setting up equipment near the security checkpoint. Maya Rodriguez found herself at the center of a media storm she'd neither sought nor avoided. She stood near Gate 23, her London flight delayed indefinitely while airport security dealt with what was being called the JFK incident. Dr. Rodriguez called Miguel Santos, who had arrived from the CNN studio with a camera crew. "Can you walk us through what happened at security tonight?" Maya looked around at the gathered media, then at the crowd of passengers who'd witnessed the events. Sarah Williams was still streaming live, her viewer count now approaching 500,000. Carlos Mendez stood nearby, his own recording having been shared thousands of times across social media platforms. "Miguel, I think the story speaks for itself," Maya said calmly. "I was treated like a security threat based on assumptions about my appearance. The entire interaction was documented by multiple witnesses. The facts are clear, but Dr. Rodriguez pressed a Fox business reporter you're about to take operational control of this airport. How does this experience change your perspective on the modernization project?" Maya paused thoughtfully. "It confirms everything we've been saying about the need for human-centered design. Infrastructure isn't just about concrete and steel. It's about the human interactions that happen within those spaces." Meanwhile, Victoria Blackwell sat in the airport security office, facing what felt like a tribunal. David Miller was there along with 2 Port Authority supervisors and a representative from the private security company that managed the checkpoint operations. Victoria Miller said, his voice tight with controlled anger, "Walk me through your decision-making process tonight." Victoria's hands shook as she tried to explain. The passenger appeared suspicious. Inappropriate dress for first-class questionable documentation and a device that looked potentially dangerous on the X-ray. Inappropriate dress, Howe asked Janet Morrison, the Port Authority supervisor. Victoria realized she was walking into the same trap that had destroyed her evening. She didn't look like a typical first-class passenger. What does a typical first-class passenger look like, Victoria? The question hung in the air like an indictment. Victoria had built her career on making those kinds of judgments, on trusting her instincts about who belonged where. But when forced to articulate those instincts out loud, they revealed themselves as something much uglier. I can't explain it exactly, but I know it when I see it." Morrison and Miller exchanged glances. They'd heard enough. Back at Gate 23, Maya was surrounded by reporters, but she'd maintained control of the narrative through her consistent calm and her refusal to express anger or demand revenge. "The question isn't whether Miss Blackwell should be punished," Maya was explaining to a MSNBC reporter. "The question is how we create procedures that prevent this kind of bias from affecting any passenger's experience." Carlos Mendez had been approached by several reporters who wanted to interview him about what he'd witnessed. He found himself in an unexpected position of influence. "I've worked airport security for 2 years," he told a CNN correspondent. "I've seen passengers treated differently based on their race, their age, their appearance, their accent. Usually nobody records it. Usually nobody has the power to do anything about it. Tonight was different because Dr. Rodriguez had both the grace to handle it professionally and the platform to make it visible. Sarah Williams had become an accidental celebrity. Her Instagram livestream was being shared across every major social media platform, and news outlets were licensing her footage. But she was most proud of the comment thread where viewers from around the world were sharing their own experiences with discrimination and bias. "This is bigger than one airport," Sarah told her audience. "This is about how we treat each other when we think the person we're treating doesn't have any power to fight back." The airport's Executive Operations Center had become a crisis management hub. Phone calls were coming in from the Port Authority Board, the mayor's office, federal transportation officials, and civil rights organizations. Everyone wanted to know how JFK planned to respond to the incident. Maya's assistant, Rachel Foster, had arrived with a small team of Titan infrastructure executives. They'd set up a temporary command center at Gate 24, coordinating media requests and managing the company's response to the unexpected publicity. Rachel said quietly, "We've got interview requests from 60 Minutes, Good Morning America, The Today Show, and about 20 other programs. The story is going international. BBC, Reuters, Al Jazeera. Everyone wants to talk about this." Maya nodded. "Schedule them thoughtfully. This is an opportunity to talk about infrastructure design and human dignity on a scale we never could have achieved with just the contract announcement." "There's something else," Rachel continued. "We're getting calls from passengers who've had similar experiences at JFK and other airports. People want to share their stories. They're saying this incident gave them courage to speak up." Maya looked around at the controlled chaos surrounding her. "Then, we need to make sure they have a platform. This can't be just about what happened to me tonight. It has to be about what happens to everyone who gets treated unfairly when nobody's watching. Detective Murphy was wrapping up his incident report, which had grown far longer and more complex than he'd anticipated. He'd been a police officer for 20 years, but he'd never documented anything quite like this. Dr. Rodriguez Murphy approached Maya during a brief break between interviews. "I want you to know that my report will reflect exactly what happened tonight. Miss Blackwell's conduct was inappropriate and potentially discriminatory. Thank you, Officer Murphy. Your professionalism throughout this situation was exemplary." Murphy hesitated, then continued. "Ma'am, I've seen a lot of bias in my 20 years on the job. Usually it happens in the shadows where it's hard to prove and harder to address. What happened tonight was different because it happened in the light with witnesses and cameras. That's not common. Officer Murphy, that's exactly why this matters. Not because I'm a CEO with cameras watching, but because bias shouldn't depend on who's watching to be wrong. The CNN live broadcast was providing continuous coverage now with updates every few minutes. Maya's story had become the lead item on every major news network, trending on social media platforms and generating op-ed pieces about racial bias, airport security, and corporate leadership. But perhaps the most significant development was happening in conference rooms across the country, where executives were watching the coverage and asking themselves, how would our employees handle a situation like this? Victoria Blackwell was learning that question the hard way. Victoria David Miller said in the security office, "You're suspended pending a full investigation. Please turn in your badge, radio, and access cards." Victoria had known this was coming, but hearing it still felt like a physical blow. "David, I've worked here for 3 years. I've never had a complaint." "You've had 7 complaints in the past 18 months. Miller corrected, consulting his notes. "All from passengers who felt they were treated unfairly based on their appearance or accent. We just never had video documentation before." Victoria stared at him. 7. I never heard about 7 complaints, because we handled them quietly. Informal resolutions, apologies, policy reminders. We thought we were protecting you. Instead, we were enabling a pattern of behavior that culminated in tonight's